Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is say. Let's look at a few definitions. The first way the verb say is used is to mean to utter words in order to convey or share information or an opinion, a feeling, or an intention, or an instruction. A second way the verb say is used is to mean to convey specified information or instructions. So with the second definition, we could be using say when we've actually seen something in writing. For example, if a friend texted you a particular message and you're sharing that with someone else, you might say, my friend said, and share what was in that text message. Another way say gets used is to mean to assert or report. So sometimes this verb say is used to indicate that we're not completely certain that something happened, but we're reporting what others have shared. Another way say is used is to mean to recite. We'll see an example of that in one of the practice sentences later. Say is an irregular verb. If we want to make the progressive tense, all we need to do is add ing. And I might have a few students who are watching this and wondering, but Katie, this verb ends in a consonant, vowel, consonant. So why aren't we doubling the last consonant? And the reason that is that A and Y together are making a vowel sound. So the Y is not making a consonant sound, and that's why we don't double the last consonant. The past tense and participle forms are what is irregular, and so say will become said, S-A-I-D. Let's look at a few phrasal verbs with say. One phrasal verb you might hear is say after, and this can mean to repeat. My example sentence might be something you hear a teacher utter. The teacher might use this sentence. Students, please say after me. A, B, C, etc. Okay, so the teacher in that case is asking the students to repeat. Another phrasal verb you might hear is to say something against. And this means to make some type of verbal complaint or criticism. And that criticism could be regarding a particular person, or it could be about a thing, an object. Here, that phrasal verb is in an example sentence. They wouldn't say anything against your work. So here, that particular sentence is meaning that someone would not make a complaint or not make a criticism about someone's work. Another phrasal verb you might hear is to say something over. And connected to that is perhaps to say something over and over again. And both of these are connected in meaning, and they generally mean that something is being repeated. And if we add that and over again, that indicates it has been said many times. So here it is in a sentence. I've said it over and over again. Please clean up after yourself. Let's continue using our verb say in a few different verb tenses. Today, we'll look at the past perfect, the simple past, and the simple present. We'll start with the past perfect. To make this verb tense, we're going to use had, the past tense of have, and then the participle form, which is said in this case. We might use this verb tense to indicate that something is happening, or sorry, I should say something happened before something else or before a certain point in time. Here is an example of an affirmative sentence. Last week, officials had said certain businesses could reopen in June. If I want to make a negative sentence in the past perfect, I just need to insert not after had. You might hear native speakers use the contraction hadn't. Here's an example sentence. The company had not said anything about their mask policy. Finally, if we want to make a yes or no question in the past perfect, we're going to start with had, then our subject, and then the participle form. Here's an example. Had she said anything to the doctor? Next, let's look at simple past tense. For this tense, we're trying to convey that a certain action was completed at a definite time in the past. To make affirmative in the simple past tense, we're just going to use said, our irregular verb. And it doesn't matter what the subject is, the verb will remain said. I want to point out one more thing here in my affirmative example that I'm going to read in just a second. I'm using quotation marks. So you can see, highlighting that for you there on the screen. And this gets used quite often with our verb say to indicate these are the exact words that were spoken by a particular person. So here's an affirmative example of a quotation. He said, "Thank you for the thoughtful gift." If we want to make a negative, simple past tense sentence, what we're going to use is did not, or the contraction didn't, and then the base verb. Here is an example. You didn't say that you were hungry. If we want to make a yes or no question in the simple past tense, we're going to start with did, then our subject, and then the base verb. Here's an example. Did they say that they would come to the party? Next, let's look at simple present. We tend to use this verb tense to talk about facts, habits, and routines. In the affirmative, our base verb will stay just as it is if our subject is I, you, we, or they. If our subject is he, she, or it, then we need to add an S to the base verb. Let's look at an affirmative example. The children say the Pledge of Allegiance each morning at school. So this sentence is conveying that meaning recite that we talked about a little bit earlier in this particular video. And if I was just talking about one child, I would change my sentence to say, the child says the Pledge of Allegiance each morning. This verb is a little funny in that our pronunciation of that third person singular says is different than the vowel sound in just the base verb. Say, says. It's an odd thing that happens sometimes in English. Next, let's look at a negative sentence in the simple present. To do this, we're going to use either does not and the base verb if our subject is he, she, or it, or we'll use do not or don't and the base verb if our subject is I, you, we, or they. Here is an example of a negative sentence. The directions don't say to add salt. So this particular meaning goes back to that definition where we're talking about something that perhaps is written. So in this case, perhaps it's a recipe. And we're cooking and we're looking at and indicating what that recipe says. Finally, if we want to make a yes or no question, we're going to start with do or does, then we'll have our subject, and then the base verb. Here's an example. Does the clock say 2:30? And this might seem like a really funny use of say, but it is used quite frequently when talking about time, what a watch says or what a clock says. And so it's really about that idea of sharing or conveying information. Next, let's take a look at some words that are connected to our verb say. And the first thing we're going to look at is a noun that is pronounced the exact same way. And as a noun, say means an opportunity to state your feelings or opinions or to influence a particular decision. So this particular noun is almost always used in the singular form. And so the way you'll know it's a verb is you're likely going to see a, say, right, together. Right? And so that article is helping us realize, oh, it's a noun. So here's an example. Will you get a say in what you're doing next weekend? So this question is asking, do you get to share your opinion? Do you get to influence the decision for what activity you will engage in next weekend? Another related noun is saying. And this is a short expression that generally contains advice or wisdom. And this is so common in, I think, all cultures and languages. It's not unique to English. But I thought I would share with you a very popular or famous American saying. And it's in this sentence. Her favorite saying is, actions speak louder than words. So what this expression is sharing, the wisdom or advice that it's offering is, don't just say you believe something, show that you believe it. Or if you say you like a particular person or you respect, make sure your actions are consistent because your actions have more power than just your words. Another phrase that uses our verb say that I think is fairly common to hear is to say you're sorry. And we can change the pronoun that's used. We can change from present tense to past tense with this, but it's this idea of saying one is sorry. And really all it means is to apologize. Here it is in a sentence. The child said he was sorry for hitting his brother. Another informal phrase that's rather old-fashioned, so I don't know that it's something you'll hear very often, but you might see it when you're reading literature, especially if the story is quite old. And that phrase is, I'll say. And it's just an expression to share strong agreement. Okay? And the way it usually gets used is you have one person saying something else, and then a second person is going to show that strong agreement. So imagine one person says, did she enjoy the park? And the second person might say, I'll say she didn't want to come home. So again, just trying to express, yes, she really enjoyed going to the park. Thanks so much for watching today's video. Have a great day.